Welcome, tennis fans, to the 35th episode of Tennis Traverse, Exploring the Game, the podcast that delves into the heart of the tennis world. I'm your host, Ivy J, and in today's episode, I'll be discussing my thoughts around the era of the Big Four as well as a brief summarizing of the tournaments this past few weeks. Before we begin, please follow all of my social medias, that is Instagram and Twitter, using @TennisTraverse, that is @TennisTraverse. If you're listening on YouTube, comment, like, and subscribe. I do want to say that I was having trouble uploading stuff on YouTube for the past few weeks, so I was giving up a bit, but then I think somehow all of my failed ones just uploaded all at once, so I had for example 30 my 32nd episode, I had 5 or 6 up on there, but I deleted it, so hopefully you guys who are listening on YouTube aren't too confused as to what was happening. But I synced all of my episodes 2 days ago, so if you guys want to go to YouTube and check that out, it's there. And if you're listening on other streaming platforms, please rate my show. I do want to mention that I have a weekly newsletter that's published on Substack, and if you just subscribe to it and type in your email, I'll send an email every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern time to your inbox, and the email will just contain stuff I'm going to talk about in Monday's episode, and I promise it's just going to be one email per week, so I'm not gonna flood your inbox. And yeah, if you're interested and is a really big fan of my podcast, feel free to subscribe, and let's just get right into today's episode. So before I want to talk about the Big Four era, I want to talk about the past few week actions. This episode is sort of a change up from the other ones because I just felt that for me it was getting too repetitive, and there isn't too many huge tournaments that's going on currently, so I'm just going to be completely honest, talk about just some tournaments that are happening, but just in a brief sense, and then I will talk about the Big Four, which is something I was really curious about. So yeah, let's just dive right in. So I want to talk about the Stuttgart Open first. This is a tournament for the women's side that's a 500 tournament, and it happened this week, and on Sunday, which is tomorrow, it will be the final. And to be honest, not that much thought in it, but the one thing I want to point out is Emma Raducanu. So obviously she's coming back from injuries, but she actually performed really well. So in the round of 16, she actually bageled Linda Noskova and then won the second set with a score of 7-5. So it was actually I feel like her performance is actually showing up really well on the clay court. And I also do want to talk about Marketa Vondrousova, how she's even though her year hasn't been that great, and after her Wimbledon title last year, she has been battling a lot, but I feel like this is a tournament where she really redeemed herself because she made it to the semifinal where she lost, but still it's one of her best runs of the year, I think, because this year she hasn't had a great run, so to say. And I also want to talk about Ons Jabeur. I feel really bad for her because obviously we can tell that she isn't at her best level yet, and she hasn't performed as well as she would have liked to. She was in 3 Grand Slam finals, but she lost all of them. It's sort of like Casper Ruud, which I will talk about later, but I just want to say that I feel really bad for her. But on the contrary, the person who beat her, which is Jasmine Paolini, she's having an incredible year, and really like to see how she's gonna do, especially at Roland Garros. I think because she won a huge 1,000 title, I think she's gonna have more confidence going into a bigger tournament, if that makes sense. And I want to talk about Aryna Sabalenka. So Sabalenka actually received a walkover in round of 16 where she played against Badosa. They were tied at 1-all in the set and then 3-all in the games where Badosa decided to withdraw, and it was a really heartfelt moment where they hugged up at the net because they're actually really close friends. But I was just kind of surprised when Sabalenka lost to Vondrousova in the quarterfinals. I guess part of it is obviously because of Sabalenka's ex-partner passing away, and I just feel like that could be a really huge impact on her game, because obviously something majorly tragic happened to her. So I don't know how she's like, I hope she's doing really well, and I hope she puts that first rather than her tennis. And the other thing I want to point out is actually Alina Rybakina beating Iga Świątek in the semifinal. This was just unexpected for me, because I just feel like on clay courts, it doesn't even matter if it's at French Open or it's just like a random tournament. Well, not a random tournament, but like a non-Grand Slam tournament like this. I just always feel that Iga's gonna dominate, because her playing style just suits the clay court perfectly. She likes to slide to the ball, and just her ability to run to every single ball. Well, I don't know how to describe it, but the clay court just is like really suitable for her. So for her to lose to Elena Rybakina, who I don't think performs the best on clay, is kind of surprising to me. But then the final, which will happen tomorrow, Sunday 7 a.m, will be Rybakina versus Marta Kostyuk. So this is going to be an incredible matchup. And then now we'll talk about the other tournament, which is Open de Rune, and this happens in France. And I just wanted to talk about this tournament because this is actually, to be honest, a 250 tournament, but the people who are in this, the lineup is super strong. We have Pavlyuchenkova, Garcia, Naomi Osaka. There's just a bunch of incredible players in this tournament. And the thing I want to talk about in this specific tournament, just one thing, which is Naomi Osaka losing round 1. And to be honest, I was kind of shocked, because even though clay isn't her forte, I just thought that because she was going out to interviews and saying how she's going to train really hard on clay court, and how one of her goals is to sort of strengthen her ability on clay and grass, I just felt like maybe she had too much expectations, and I was really worried how it will hurt her, but I think she can learn from the experience a lot. I actually watched a highlight of this, and to be honest, part of it was that she wasn't at her best, but I just felt like she just needs to find herself more on the clay court, and that's it. Okay, we'll move on to the Barcelona Open. I want to talk about this because obviously it's one of a bigger tournament in like the ATP Tour in the clay swing. And the reason I want to talk about this is because we now have a rematch, basically, of what happened in Monte Carlo, which is Tsitsipas versus Casper Ruud in the finals. I thought that Casper was going to win just because I felt like he wanted it more, but he turned out that it was kind of like wacky in a weird way. It's like, I watched the second set, and when Casper was serving, when he was down like 4-5 and trying to hold his serve, I just had a gut feeling that he's going to lose. I don't know. I think it's just he's like wants a 1,000 or 500 title so much that every time he plays in it, he's just super stressed out. I think that's super clear in this tournament. But at the same time, I feel like he really needs to get over the hump, and he has sort of another chance to do it in Barcelona, which is going to be a final that takes place tomorrow, which is on a Sunday. It's going to be Tsitsipas again versus Casper Ruud, and this is just going to be a rematch, and I'm really rooting for Casper to win this. And also, the other thing I want to point out is Rafael Nadal actually played in this tournament. Surprise, I guess, because he's always withdrawing like this day before, but I'm really happy that he played, and he actually got into the second round, I believe, where he lost to Alex de Minaur. And not gonna lie, I can't really say much about this because de Minaur is an incredible player, especially this year. He's really, I think, found his form. And the score was, I believe, 5-7 and 1-6. And I can't lie, it wasn't as close as what I thought it would be, especially in the second set. But I think Rafa really did his best, and some of the balls he hit just shows that how well he knows the court. And I'll find links if I can, but if I don't come at me. Anyways, okay. Now we'll talk about the main topic of today's video. Maybe this will be shorter. This episode will probably be shorter, but I just want to talk about the Big Four era and if it's coming to an end. So for those of you guys who don't know who the Big Four are, there are basically 4 players on the ATP tour that has basically like just dominated the tennis game, and that is Novak Djokovic, who's 36 years old currently, Rafael Nadal, who's 37 years old currently, Roger Federer, who is 41 years old currently and he has retired, Andy Murray, who's 36. So just honestly, if you just Google like impressive stats about the tennis Big Four, you'll find so many. And I actually learned a lot from researching, but I'll just talk about one stat, which is that for 2 decades, from 2003 Wimbledon Championship to 2023 US Open, the Big Four has won a combined 69 Grand Slam singles titles. That is actually insane because if we really think about it, there's so many players on the tour, and that's a 20-year span, and I'm doing math right now, but each year has 4 Grand Slams, so 20 times 4 is 80, so that's 80 possible Grand Slams. So for just 4 players to win 69 out of 80 Grand Slams, that is kind of insane to me because obviously there's so many players. So it's just really insane how the 4 of them are dominated. And I want to talk about like the proportion, like how many of them won how much, if that makes sense. So Novak won 24 out of the 69. Rafa won 22 out of the 69, Roger won 20 out of the 69, and Andy won 3 out of the 69. And a lot of people might be like, why are you putting Andy Murray alongside the other people who has like more Grand Slam? The reason is that I feel like he was the only person who sort of rised a tad bit later, but he still managed to challenge the position of the other 3. And there obviously is a debate about whether it's the Big 3 or the Big 4, but I just wanted to make it less controversial, so I just put them all in there. And I will talk about their sort of now, like what they are now, and from like in the order of the number of Grand Slams they have, so that it's not too controversial. Obviously, the number of Grand Slam doesn't mean like the more you have doesn't mean that you're a better, like you're the GOAT of tennis, if that makes sense. But statistic wise, Novak Djokovic is obviously the GOAT because he had 24 titles, just like strictly stating based on how many titles he has. But I want to talk about Andy Murray first. So Andy Murray is actually currently playing, and he stated, I believe in a press conference, that this could be his last season, and he had a heartbreaking tear in his legs, I believe, and it was just really heartbroken because he played through that. And I think something that really inspires me about all of these 4 players are just how they're willing to sort of fight until the end. And Andy especially, he trained really hard, and he actually has a broken hip, which is crazy to me because it's really hard for a tennis player to have a broken hip. And like I feel like in any sport, it's really hard to play with a broken hip, obviously, because tennis is a sport. If you play, you know how important it is to move your feet, and to have a broken hip, it means that just your footwork is automatically slower. So yeah, but he's still here, and at the start of the season, he really isn't finding his form, but I feel like he's slowly finding his form again. Unfortunately, he had an injury, which he states that he'll come back maybe around Wimbledon, and I think that will be his last tournament. But then I will talk about Roger Federer. To be honest, not that much to say because he's retired, but I think he is sort of the most, I don't want to say well-known, but when people associate with the GOAT, they think about Roger. I think part of it is because he's the oldest, so he's been around for the longest. And just the way he plays his one-handed backhand and his forehand, it's just, and his serve, especially his serve, it's just like the beauty. of tennis, and I think he just embodies it fully. And then we'll talk about Rafael Nadal. So Nadal, obviously, he also stated that this probably will be his last season, but don't quote me on that, and don't quote them on that, because I don't know if it's like actually gonna be their last season. And I just think that Rafa is an amazing player in general, especially on clay. I don't think there's much to say about him on clay. If you guys just Google like Rafael Nadal on clay, you'll see what I mean. Like he has so many titles on clay. It's actually crazy. There's like this YouTube video, I'll see if I can find it, but it's like players naming all the Roland Garros champions, and it's just like Rafa saying me for like 20 times, but it's just super funny. And yeah, it just shows that how he's super dominating on a clay court. And then we'll talk about Novak Djokovic. So I feel like a lot of the reasons why people are still saying that the big four era is still strong is because of Novak. So Novak, I would say, is an incredible player, and just let's say that even though he's sort of like the second youngest, but if you look at the Grand Slam titles, he has 24, which is the most out of all the big four players. And last year he had like 3 out of 4 of the Grand Slams, and he's always won so many Grand Slams. It's actually kind of crazy, like his record and how much he cares about his body, like sort of like maintains his longevity in the sport. And a lot of people are saying how because of Novak solely, and that's the reason of why we're still in the big four era, because last year he won 3 out of 4 Grand Slams. But I sort of want to break this down into how there were a lot of players who were coming up, and people are saying how they're already challenging the big four, but we just proved to like basically everyone time and time again how the big four is still dominating. So these are the players that I think are the first wave. So these players include Stefanos Tsitsipas, 25 years old, Alexander Zverev, 27 years old, and Daniil Medvedev, 28 years old. So Steph does not have a Grand Slam title. Alexander Zverev also does not have a Grand Slam title, whereas Daniil Medvedev have 1 Grand Slam title. And well, from the moment I was like into tennis, because I was born in 2007, so all I really heard about on the ATP side is just them four dominating consistently, with like sometimes with like Stan Wawrinka in the mix. But I just felt like these four players are the players I've heard about every single time. And when these players, Stefanos Tsitsipas, Alexander Zverev, and Medvedev, was emerging, I was like, who are these? Because I really didn't know who they are, because all I really heard about was the other 4. And I think time and time again, when we see them in a final versus like Novak Djokovic, for example, it's always just that Novak's going to dominate them. And in Roland Garros with Rafa, he's still always just dominating. And to be honest, I was kind of disappointed, because in a way, I really wanted new people to come up, but at the same time, even though the big four were getting older, they were still maintaining their top level, so it wasn't something that I was really concerned about. And these people are just sort of the first wave of people who, like, people in the media were saying how they have a chance to compete against the top players, but I feel like the results are mostly disappointing. And then we have another wave. So this wave, I think, looks more promising than the first wave. And this wave is Carlos Alcaraz, age 20, who already has 2 Grand Slams, Jannik Sinner, age 22, who has 1 Grand Slam, and Hojo Rune, who's 20, he has 0 Grand Slams. But I feel like these 3 other players that are now actually sort of posing a larger threat or a bigger threat compared to the other 3 I mentioned. So I want to talk about Carlos first because he has 2 Grand Slams. So Carlos, to be honest, maybe it's me, but I haven't heard of him much for the past like 5 years. But I think last year was when I really heard about him, where he beat like Rafa and Novak in one tournament and he became the champion. At first I was just really stunned at his ability to move, his movement, his ability to slide on a clay court especially, and to run to literally every single ball. Like, it's kind of insane. Like, when the ball comes down from the other side, you just don't expect him to run all the way over there. Oh, sorry, my shoulder just cracked. Anyways, and when he's playing, his ability to manipulate his racket and the ball through, like, for example, I think one of his signature moves, well, not really anymore, but he used to disguise his forehand as a drop shot, and it's just so beautiful. And I was admiring his tennis. I don't know, I think he just has a lot of finesse to his game. And the moment where I thought that he posed a threat to the big 4 is last season, where he actually beat Novak Djokovic in Wimbledon, which is kind of insane because Novak, he won like 4 Wimbledons in a row before last year. So I think everyone expected Novak to win, and Novak actually won the first set with a score of 6-1, I believe. So for Carlos to come back, especially it's Novak's home court, is sort of impressive. And that has never happened to any of the first wave people. So Tsitsipas, Zverev, and Medvedev, it has never happened to any of them. And the other person I want to point out is Jannik Sinner. So obviously, I think from all of my episodes, he's one of the people I talk most about just because of how great of a year he had so far. And I want to talk about his first title here. So he actually beat Novak in Australia, which was kind of insane because Novak literally has so many titles in Australia. He has 1 in 2008, 3 from 2011 to 2013, 1 in 2015, 1 in 2016, 3 in a row from 2019 to 2021, 1 in 2023. Well, he just has so many titles in Australia. And for Jannik to beat Novak, I think it's something that even Novak did not expect to happen, because I just felt that Australia before was like sort of just a given Grand Slam. Like, we all know that Novak is gonna win. And even though at the start of the season people are like, Novak's not at his best level, I think a lot of people just still expected Novak to win. So this was sort of surprising. And from just his performance so far of the entire year, I think it's promising to say that he's going to win more Grand Slams later on. And the way he's so composed on the court as well just makes him a more sort of better Grand Slam contender. And then I want to talk about Hojo Rune. You guys might be surprised that I included him. To be honest, I was kind of surprised too, because I don't know, I just think his performance for the past few months hasn't been great. He's always been trying to manipulate who was his coach and firing his coach, but I feel like the talent is there and the mindset is there. I feel like even though his mental game might not be the strongest, he really wants it. Like, he really wants to win. And for him to beat Novak a few years back at Paris was actually insane. And that match, guys, it was actually one of the best match ever. It was actually crazy. And yeah, so please make sure to check that match out as well. I probably won't remember to link these, so yeah, just go check out the match if you can. Just Google on YouTube like Paris Masters Hojo Rune versus Novak Djokovic and you'll find what I'm saying. But yeah, okay, that's basically all, and I just want to sort of pull it back. And my conclusion is that we really can't tell if the Big Four era has come to an end or not. I think after this season, maybe we will be able to tell. I would say maybe after this season and the next season, because Novak is known for, if he doesn't have a great season, he's known for coming back the next season and becoming even better. And he stated that he will come back. This is not his last season for sure, so we don't know what's going to happen next season, but I think it's safe to say that if his season stays continuously like this and his next season is also like this, honestly, I don't think he's gonna win any Grand Slams. And if he doesn't win a Grand Slam for 2 seasons straight in a row, I think it's pretty safe to say that the Big Four era has come to an end. But if Novak wins like 1 Grand Slam, I would also say that the Big Four era has come to an end. If he wins like 2 out of 4 the whole year, I think it's still safe to say that we're still in the Big Four era with just Novak holding on. But yeah, I think that's it. I hope you guys really liked my input. I found it really interesting to talk about the players in like 2 waves. I felt like it was a really interesting way to approach this question. Obviously, this question has been asked a lot because this year Novak really hasn't had the best year, and everyone is wondering what's happening. Like, is it a new era? I don't think it's a new era. I think we still need time to tell, because obviously a lot of people are saying how the seasons, like, we're well into the season. I would say part of me agree with that, but the other part of me is like, we still have Roland Garros, Wimbledon, and US Open. We still have 3 more tournaments, and then we have the Olympics this year as well as ATP finals. So we really don't know what's going to happen at all. And maybe Novak's going to come back. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe Rafa's going to win French Open. Anything can happen in tennis, especially. So anyways, I really hope you guys like my input. This is a bit shorter, not by much though. I'd like to talk a lot when it comes to tennis. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Follow my Instagram and Twitter using @TennisTravers. That is @TennisTravers. If you're listening on YouTube, comment, like, and subscribe. If you're listening on other streaming platforms, rate my show. It really helps me a lot. And please follow my newsletter if you haven't already. And I do want to say that I'm not really active on Twitter anymore because of school. I have the AP exams coming up and it's really, really stressful. So I won't miss an upload, but if I'm not on Twitter or any social medias, that's because I have studying to do. But apart from that, that's all of today's episode. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.